Given the rhetoric around cutting wasteful spending, please provide one specific part of the budget where you believe waste exists, and how would you make cuts that would not affect the classroom?
Yeah, I thank you for that. So um, I have scrutinized the district budget, and I think I can find $120 million of cuts immediately that will not hit any local school, that will literally be $120 million that we can get back to our schools. I did this analysis before I even figured out um, what was happening with Prop 28. And I would just say hat tip to all the parents out there. So Prop 28, this fraud that was perpetrated by the central office of LA Unified, it was discovered by parents, some of whom may even be on this call today. And through their digging and the math that they did, they uncovered what happened with Prop 28. And so kudos to them. I just think I'm doing my small part, giving life to it, and continuing to follow up on it. But $30 million from Prop 28 absolutely needs to go back to the schools. And then I'll say again, every single LA Unified budget, there are six big categories, 5 or 6 big categories in the budget. Every single one of them has their own program and administration overhead line. This is separate from the over $400 million of the central office Beaudry budget. This is completely separate. Each of those is wildly out of sync with what our best practice is in public schools, right? The overhead percentages for each of those programs, again, above and beyond the central office Beaudry budget, average 6 to 7% of the total budget. There's literally hundreds of $millions. We need to bring those budget line items back into best practice with what happens in public schools and well-run districts throughout the nation. We do that. We have $120 million that we bring back to schools, in addition to the $30 million that is still owed to elementary schools. And thank you to those parents who really have, done the digging and done the math. But the math is really important.
Time.
Hey, Scott, 3 minutes.
Sure. Thank you, Carl. I know those parents, Dan. They're very good parents. They're my fact checkers. They report to me all the time about what's happening in the district, what's happening with Prop 28, and I do work with them also. So I thank you for mentioning them. And I am endorsed by parents supporting teachers. I know who we're talking about. Again, local control, the most important factor for me to make sure our schools are successful. One of the things I've noticed when looking at the board meeting budget books is the number of unfilled positions at Beaudry. And there are some positions I don't think that we have filled for years and remain open. And one of my goals would be to close those positions and put the money back into the budget to go to the schools. There are lots of unfilled positions all over the district. That's a really important thing for me to make sure that these are closed and the money comes back to us. Again, fraud and waste, making sure that they're not over supplying schools with things that they do not need. I watch and see when I visit my schools, I see boxes of textbooks that are still unopened. And I ask them, why are they still here? And they tell me that, well, they don't use those books anymore. And, it has to be taken care of. Those books should never have been purchased. So we need to get a credit for those books and being sent back. And my favorite story, of course, I tell the kids because they ask me lots of times, well, what does a board member do? What do you do? And I explain what I do and going to the board meetings and budgets and everything. But the story that gets them all the time is my chocolate milk story. And the chocolate milk story is we had a superintendent named John Daisy who felt that chocolate milk was evil. And he took chocolate milk out of the schools. And I found that the kids were not drinking milk anymore. They didn't take the white milk. They just didn't drink milk. But I work with food services. I work with our administration, and we brought chocolate milk back to our schools. Kids are drinking milk, much healthier for them to have the calcium in the chocolate milk, very little sugar. But those are kind of some of the stories that I think about how we can improve the district and make sure that kids are healthy at the same time.
Dan, 1 minute.
Sorry, can you repeat the first part of the question? I was listening to Scott's response and kind of lost track of the original question.
Sure. Given the rhetoric and this is from a constituent, given the rhetoric around cutting wasteful spending, please provide one specific part of the budget where you believe waste exists, and how would you make cuts that would not affect the classroom?
Oh, right. So I started with so I started with this question, and I think again, just even as a teacher in the classroom, it's been very clear to me how the district, without effective oversight, consistently oversteps its bounds. You see it in attendance fraud. You see it in Prop 28 arts funding, which still has not been fully returned to school. You see it at the highest levels, where whether it is the current school facilities bond or these unbelievable overhead line items that are being charged for different district programs, right? Without an effective oversight function, the district is literally siphoning off millions of dollars away from local schools. And so having a math teacher and a budget expert and someone who really loves the numbers is just an important part of providing oversight in LA Unified.